Hello everyone, welcome back. I am Faculty Amarachi from CapacityBay and I will be your instructor for today's section. In our previous class, we talked about introduction to CSS, and in this section we are going to take a step further and learn more about the CSS. We are actually going to be talking about the inline, the internal and the external CSS, because I would want us to know about this and how they work. So without much ado, let's dive right in, and as usual we're going to open up our VS Code, and in here I have some codes already that I created, and I don't think this will actually be foreign to us because we've learned about this in our HTML section. So I'm going to go ahead and open this on our browser so we'll see them as they are working. So like I said, we are going to be learning about the inline, the internal and the external styles in CSS. So let's just start up, and we are going to start off with the inline CSS. This is the CSS that is actually targeted inside our HTML tag that we actually want the style to affect. Let me quickly do a practical for us to understand what that means. So here now I have our body element. Now I want our body not to have this white again, so I'm going to come in here and then I'm going to use a style attribute to create the CSS. That is what the inline is all about. So I'm just going to type in style. So VS Code has brought it out for us, and so I want the background color to actually change. I don't want it to be this color again, so all I have to do is just to hit this, and then I want the color to give me, okay, let's go with the cardedly. You see, immediately it affects the body alone. So this is what the inline CSS does. And apart from the body, I can also come here and also use the style attribute again to create another style. And here this time around, instead of background, I'm going to go with the color, and I'm going to say let my H2 be crimson. Oh sorry, I don't have anything here, so let me just go. Remember, our elements always have an opening tag, a content and also the closing tag. So immediately the home here changes to the crimson. So but now if you look, I have another H2 here. So what happens to this? Because you notice this H2 style here doesn't affect this, and this is one disadvantage of the inline styling in CSS. So it's actually not recommended that much. It's actually not recommended. So instead of doing it this way, there's actually a better way to do it. So that will also now take us to the next type of CSS styling we are going to be talking about, and that is the internal CSS. Now, how does this internal CSS work? Now, the internal CSS works this way. Below this, our title, inside the head element we have here, below this, our title, we are actually going to open a style element. We are actually going to open a style element beneath this, our title. So I'm just going to go ahead and open my style here, and I'm going to enter it. Now, how does this work? In order for you to specify or to select the HTML tag that you want to apply the CSS to, all you have to do is to specify the name of the element you want to change right here inside this our style element. So let's say you want to change this body. Remember, we've changed it to this color. Now let's say we want to actually do this using the internal CSS. All I have to do now is to write the body, that which is the name of my element that I want to use the CSS on, and after that I'm going to open this curly braces, hit enter. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm just going to cut off this here. and I'm going to cut it off. You see immediately it changes back to the default one we have here, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to say please give me padded leave. You see, this is how our internal CSS works. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this off because we don't need the style attribute there again. And now coming to the more interesting part, remember we have two H2 here and just one is being affected by the style we input here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here again, hit enter, and then I'm going to select my element now, which is the H2, and I want it to be affected, the whole H2 in this my file to be affected. So I'm just going to hit enter, and then I'm also going to come copy this and I will cut it off. You can see it goes off, and then I'm going to come here. I'm going to come here and I'll paste it. Just notice the magic that happened. Immediately I do this, the two H2 I have here takes the color, the same color automatically, unlike what we have here whereby one was actually taking the color, which isn't what I actually want for my page. So I'm going to take off this, and now this is actually what the internal CSS helps us to do. Now doing this internally links our CSS to our HTML, but being able to do it on our HTML body is actually good. But what happens to other pages that we have here? Because if you go here now, I think on my login I have H2 here, but it's not going to be affected. So let's just go here and click on login. You can see it's not being affected. Even the body is actually still white, which is actually different from what we have here. And so we can actually decide, say, okay, let's go ahead and copy this style, and let's say come to the login, then beneath the title also input this. So let's go, you can see it changes. But then let's say you have a lot of files, will you just keep going this way, copying, pasting? Is not actually advisable, and it will not help you to actually do your work effectively. So what are we going to do? So I'm going to take off this again, and we are going to see another type of CSS, which is actually the external CSS. So say what we actually want is to have a single location where when we change any style, any styles in our CSS, in that one place, in that one location, is actually going to get reflected in the order of our pages. That's actually the whole thing we want to do, and that will actually make our work easier. So like I said, that will introduce us to the external CSS, and to actually do this, what we have to do is to come here and to create a file. We can call the file style.css. Always remember, it just like our HTML ends with .html, our CSS also ends with .css. You can actually decide to create a folder. Let's say you call the folder CSS. Let's say you call this a folder CSS, and then inside the folder you can then decide to create a file that you call style.css. All still good, but I want to actually go with just this style.css here. So I'm just going to click out. Let me just take this off. Alright, so we are back to what we have initially. So this is the external CSS that we just created, and we'll take it up from here. So how does this actually work? So let's say I want my index.html to be my base styling, where my CSS, I want my CSS styling to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take off this because we don't need it in our external CSS. Now I'm going to create a link. Now this link, this is how it's going to be. You can see it's showing us a relationship to style sheet, that means that this actually have a relationship to a style sheet somewhere. So let's say your browser is actually reading this code. Of course, it's going to read it from the head going down. When it gets to this place, it's going to say, oh, there's actually a style sheet somewhere. So it's going to go and look for the style sheet and then load it together with your HTML. So that's why it's actually good to put your CSS styling here. So inside this, our href, we are going to reference this style.css that we have created here. So I'm just going to say style.css. Now, having linked this, we can then come here and actually start our styling. But I want you to know this: if you don't link this our style.css to this your HTML, is not going to actually work. So let me actually quickly show that so you see what I'm saying. So I'm just going to come here. Let's say, remember we talked about the selector, the property, and the value in our last class. Please, if you haven't watched the video, you can just go back and just view it. It's actually very necessary. So I'm going to have my selector here, and then I'm going to open up my curly braces, and inside I'm going to input a property, let's say background color as well, and I want the background color this time to be okay. Now nothing happens. You can see nothing happened in our page. But if I go back here and then in our reference, and I'm just going to say style.css, and then so I'm just going to go ahead and type in our style.css here, and the color here will automatically comes out. But in case if you noticed, like maybe the color you actually the CSS you're actually putting is not working, you might actually need to go back to your code and check what the problem is, or you can actually check in case if you have not saved your progress as of when you put the style.css. One of those things might be the problem. So you can see immediately it comes up and my body is changed. Now let's say I want all my pages. You can see now my login is still, if I go to login, it's still white, and my about, if I go to my about, is also still white. So what am I going to do in case if I want this style to actually affect all of them? All I have to do is just to come here and just copy this. That's all. I don't need to actually start copying the styling itself. I just need to copy this link. So I'm going to come to my login, and then I'm going to enter it. I'm going to also go to my about, and I'm also going to enter it. And this is, you can see the beauty of the external CSS. And then if I come here and apart from the body, I decide to choose another one, which is H2. Let's say in my H2 I want the color now to change, and I want the color to be red. Okay, so let's say on my index, let me go back to my index. So I'm going to save this. You can see it immediately comes up, and then I will go to my login. I think my login also, you can see my sign up, which is also a H2, and H2 element also changes to the color that I stipulated in my style.css. So this is actually how to create an external style sheet, and it's actually the best because I can just go ahead and be inputting the different elements and the styles I want for them, and it will just keep going and then be affecting the changes will be going on immediately on my website or my web page. Now to do a quick recap, like I explained, the inline CSS is used to apply a unique style to a single HTML element. It uses the style attribute of an HTML element. Like we already see, I can just come to do that here. While the internal CSS is used to define a style for a single HTML page, it will only just affect this. Is majorly for a single HTML page. An internal CSS is defined in the head section of an HTML page with a style element opened. Now to the last of them, which we just talked about some minutes ago, which is the external CSS, is used to define the style for many HTML pages. To use an external style sheet, add a link to it in the head section of each HTML page. And that will be all for this section. If you have any question, any question at all, drop that in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, and also hit the bell notification icon to get notified whenever we drop a new video. See you in the next section. Thank you.